It's a really heartfelt film. I think there's a very honest perception of the different conflicts that go on for hardcore mountaineers, and yeah, it's gripping and dark at points. Definitely a kind of an ascent for the viewer.
You know, one of the things that really comes through on the film is when they're breaking trail. You know, some of this is waist deep snow at altitude. You know, above 8,000 meters, your body starts to die. So literally, it's against the clock stuff up there. And the fact that they're just battling the elements, but breaking trail in such a incredibly powerful way blew my mind.
Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of Flixwatcher podcast. Today, we are joined by Claire.
Hello.
Steve.
Hi there.
And as always, Helen.
Hello.
And we're going to be talking about 14 Peaks.
Thank you as always to the mighty people for the mighty tunes, and thanks to Ben from Rockwood Audio for his awesome editing skills.
Please do remember to write a review and rate us on Apple Podcasts and anywhere you can do where you listen to the podcast, because it really does help us.
And you can join in the conversation with us on Twitter
at FlixWatcherPod and on Instagram
at Flixwatcher. Hello everyone, welcome to Flixwatcher podcast. Joining us remotely today, we have Steve and Claire. If you could please say hello to our listeners and tell them a little bit more about who you are and what you do, please.
Hi, folks. It's great to be here. My name's Steve Scott. I'm one of the directors of Kendal Mountain Festival.
And my name's Claire Carter, and I'm the artistic director. And basically that means I get the fun job of helping to choose the films that show at the festival.
So tell us a bit about the festival, because as this episode goes out, it's the 17th of November, if you guys listen to it on release day. So the festival starts on the 2 days after, on the 19th.
Not quite. It actually starts on the 18th.
Oh, there we go.
Next Thursday. And we're a guest. We were 40 years old last year. So if it wasn't for the pandemic, it would have been the biggest party in the outdoor calendar. So we're sort of reconvening that party this year and getting everybody together in Kendal for the big one this year. So it's back to a live and a broadcast event actually this year.
Can you tell us a bit about what happens in the festival, in a mountain festival?
Yeah, so it's a big mixture of speakers, music, lots of parties, art, sometimes some theatre. But one of the really big focuses for the festival is definitely film. We've got an international festival competition with 13 prizes, which are both cash and like this beautiful sculpture. And I guess Steve likes to say we're the Oscars of the outdoor world, which is perhaps, maybe a bit glamorous, but I think we do really like to try and find films that have got real prestige. Mm-hmm. And certainly this year we've got some really amazing premieres, 14 Peaks being one of them. But we've got some beautiful films such as The River, which is the script is written by Robert McFarlane and voiced by William Dafoe. Stuff like that, just a kind of a whole variety from mountain to environmental to what I would describe as human spirit. So really kind of inspiring stuff. And
it's a focus on the outdoors, essentially, is what's going on here.
Yes.
Yeah, the outdoors is that sort of metaphor, if you like, for all the different cultural elements. It's a bit like the Edinburgh Fringe of outdoors, really, and I prefer to call it the BAFTAs of outdoor filmmaking rather than the Oscars. Keep it British in a way, because it is a very quirky mix of creativity and sort of various cultures that touch into outdoor. Whether that's we have a great literature event, like Claire mentioned, we have art theatre. But film definitely is at the core of the event. Plus all the different industries that sort of support that. So we have this year, we've got a record number of filmmakers coming in from all over the world.
76.
76.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. God, that's a lot of people to put up, isn't it? We've got about 150 guest speakers, from athletes, ambassadors, activists, creatives, writers, you name it. Everybody sort of gathers. It's a huge melting pot.
But basically, the tagline is share the adventure. And the idea is that you'll be in the bar rubbing up with, complete stars who might have just been doing something totally mental in the middle of nowhere. But it's also supposed to be about families and having fun and just getting inspired to go out the back door. So that's kind of the gist.
So I think Mental in the Middle of Nowhere does describe Nims.
Yeah.
And also bars and parties also seems to describe Nims and his gang. So we're talking today about the 14 Peaks, which is going to be premiering at the Kendal Mountain Festival. And this is actually premiering on the 19th, which is where I got the 19th from, not the 18th. Yeah. So as you listen to this, guys, if you listen to this on Wednesday, the 17th, the festival opens tomorrow and the premiere opens the day after tomorrow. So, Claire, you're going to give the short synopsis. I'm going to get my timer, my countdown timer.
No pressure.
Okay.
No pressure, but there's all the pressure. So you can't go for more than 60 seconds. And give us a synopsis on 14 Peaks.
Okay, so 14 Peaks is arriving on Netflix on the 29th of November. It's directed by Torquil Jones, but it's exec produced by Jimmy and Chai, who, if you've seen Free Solo, who hasn't, they're responsible for that. So it's a big number, but it takes quite I'd almost say subversive route into mountaineering culture. Nims is a prolific Nepali climber. And in this film, I think you really get to see Nepali culture at its roots, whether that's pushing really hard on the mountain, family and heritage, or ubiquitous partying in Kathmandu. It's a really heartfelt film. I think there's a very honest perception of the different conflicts that go on for hardcore mountaineers. And yeah, it's gripping and dark at points. Definitely a kind of an ascent for the viewer.
Yeah, and we should say normally we do give away massive spoilers throughout each episode, but this time we're going to scale it back a bit because we want you guys to hear our conversation without fear of spoilers, and hopefully go and watch it yourself. And if you can't make the Mountain Festival, watch it on the Netflix when it comes to when it's out on the 29th of November. First of all, I love this, but one thing I loved is you said about James. Is it Jimmy Chin? James Chin.
Jimmy Chin. Yeah.
Jimmy Chin, because I love Free Solo. We've had the Dawn Wall on here, and randomly I seem to be a fan of like mountain and climbing documentaries. Why is that? Why?
Go, you tell us.
I don't know. It's
the beauty of the scenery, kind of getting to experience what it's like to be on a mountain without the physical pain and fear that actually goes with going up a mountain. I don't know.
I think there's something very metaphorical about these films, though, which is why we love Kendal, because being on an edge, whether it's literal or people were on the edge during the pandemic, like we all know what that feels like. So having to watch somebody make that mental step of being like, oh, fuck it. Okay, I'm going to cope with this. I'm going to deal with this. I'm going to move forwards and have that experience. I think that's really inspiring to everybody.
I think also a lot of the driving focus is a lot of what spurs this of the people, of the subjects of the films.
There's always a clear focus, isn't there?
Yeah, there's always a clear focus. It's like the person's super driven and they know exactly what they're going to do. And often that's sod everyone else in order to get there. And that's kind of endearing, but also it's super engaging, isn't it?
There's a certain spectrum obsessiveness about a lot of the characters in these films, whether you look at Honnold in Free Solo or obviously Nirmal Nimsdai Purja. I think these individuals, these characters fascinate us because they really are out on that spectrum. They're fighters. They've had to overcome huge difficulties in their lives in some ways. I think we can all relate to that in a very small way. But yeah, like Claire said, it's a huge metaphor for a lot of things at the moment. And as the film unravels as well, I feel that it sort of reflects a lot of the issues we're facing in society. And I thought the filmmakers did a great job of bringing that to the fore.
Yeah.
I think the support crew around these individuals is really interesting as well, because who gets attracted to actually spend their time with somebody that driven, and what kind of characteristics are required to be selfless and encourage somebody to achieve their own goals. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, because we hear a lot from Nim's wife in this, for example.
Suchi.
And I think she's fantastic, a fantastic character. We don't see her doing much. She's essentially talking head in this, but talking about, well, look, I can't spend every waking minute being worried about Nims, otherwise I will literally be, that will be my whole life. And understand what his drives and how to do it, but we're looking to support him. And it's kind of fascinating the kind of the people that have to be around them. He felt kind of a lot of pressure from his brother to say, his brother's like, don't do this, it's insane.
And also respect the cultural traditions of Nepal.
Yeah.
Look, the younger brother is supposed to look after the family and not just disappear off up 14,000 meter peaks.
Well, let's talk a bit about the actual challenge, because it's insane, but it's one of the things as a non-climber, I would never really, I would never have understood the magnitude of this. And this is the same thing with free solo and the Dawn Wall, for example. If someone said, yeah, this guy's going to climb up El Cap, I'm like, okay, I've seen other people do it. I don't understand the problem. I know many people have gone up Everest and just think, well, that's the tallest one, so the other ones are
Easier.
Just get on with it. But it's not at all. I don't know if
the
before this
context
documentary
is
came
given
out.
that the last person who did this took him 16 years, and
Yeah.
there's obviously the debate about with or without oxygen, but that kind of time scale, it comes quite early on into the documentary that to do it took 16 years, and it's just
And he's attempting it within 6 months.
Yeah,
within a year.
It was a superhuman effort, in so many different ways, not only logistically but physiologically as well. And I think one of the things that really resonated with me was the fact quite early on in the film that they brought up the issue of the Sherpas, how integral, how key they are to the success of Western mountaineers, and the fact that they've been, I was slightly ashamed in the sense of our heritage, that we've sort of, slightly eroded their influence, if you like. I think they mentioned that they were like ghosts to a lot of the Westerners' successes, and for me, that really, really spoke volumes, because this film was very much about bringing the Sherpas, the teamwork, their skills, their inherent drive, if you like, to the fore. And Nims was very vocal about the fact that he would not have completed that without the likes of his colleagues, Mingma, David, Sherpa, Lakpa, Dendi, Geljan, Gessman, those guys.
I love that introduction.
We would never remember the names of those guys. If they were Western mountaineers, I could roll those off, at the top of my tongue. But, to actually have to learn those guys who could probably blow a lot of the Western mountaineers away in achievement. So I think it really, really plants a stake of intent, if you like, in sort of a new face, a new generation of mountaineering, certainly in the high ranges.
I really love the introduction of his team. It was almost like a heist movie intro.
Yes. But that for me is why they were so successful, because I guess you could relate that to the earlier Shackleton type expeditions where they were all actors and singers. They all knew how to enjoy life, how to bring each other up if they were down, how to lift the mood. And I think that sort of teamwork, the inherent picking your A team, was very much at the forefront of Nims's possible challenge. It was incredible to see how he built that team and how they all supported him.
And I'm right from the start. He said, "I'm paying them more than any Western climber would do for this expedition," which is great. And is, like I say, he's foregrounding them. And I remember learning about Sir Edmund Hillary being the first, quote unquote, person to climb Everest. And then there's like a footnote with Sherpa Tenzing. I was like, well, did he not get to the top as well? Why do we give him Tenzing Norgay? Why do we not foreground this guy as well? And I've seen other documentaries, and I think in the film, like Everest as well, people pay more and more respect to Tenzing Norgay as an equal pioneer in getting up Everest for the first time. And I think that's what a fantastic thing that Nims is pushing through this whole documentary, this whole feature, and his whole kind of ethos.
There was actually a really beautiful film made last year called The Ghosts Above by Renan Ozturk, which discussed the kind of dubious heritage behind some of certainly British and American mountaineering ascents in those high ranges. That's definitely worth looking up.
Okay. Helen, where you haven't seen Free Solo yet, but how is this for a documentary for you?
I really enjoyed it. I think I went into it thinking there'd be some kind of cool scenery, some kind of kind of peril and, kind of a bit of adventure. But what I actually got was a much more kind of life-affirming sort of feeling and sort of a start to recognising the work that the Nepalese do on the mountains and supporting people. And when he said, if this had been a Westerner, we'd have a much bigger crowd for this. And I was like, I can remember seeing his photo on Everest that he took, being in all the news and everything, and sort of the photo he took where there's like a trail of people. I remember that, but I don't remember hearing the story with kind of, his challenge or what he was doing. So that kind of, I recognise that photo, but I didn't realise that it was part of this. It's still, even though he's kind of come this far and made this film, he's still like behind or below, you know, a Western climber or someone like that. So it was kind of a mixture of like real joy for him, but also kind of quite bittersweet that he's, you know, out there saying, you know, this is where we are now. So I really hope that this film shines a bigger light on the Nepalese and, you know, the amazing work that they do, because I've done like a very small amount of climbing, and it's they talk about you'd be being only 45% fucked, and that's really true, because just watching some of the scenes, they're literally like scampering up ice, which if you've ever done any walking with a pack on or anything, like you're just very, very slow and you're like, oh god, heaving and like, whew, and they're just flying up the ice. So it was quite a lot of amazement for me, just like, oh my god. And just some of the times which were completed in, they just made it look so easy, and like even contemplating like getting to base camp would be enough for me, like the thought of it.
On that note, Helen, I think you're right with, you know, one of the things that really comes through on the film is when they're breaking trail. You know, some of this is waist deep snow at altitude. You know, above 8,000 meters, your body starts to die. So literally, it's against the clock stuff up there. And the fact that they're just battling the elements, but breaking trail in such a incredibly powerful way blew my mind. And, you know, these are people who often mostly fix the lines for a lot of the Western expeditions. You know, it's thanks to them that they put up these fixed ropes that a lot of the Western expeditions can attach themselves to for safety. So the Sherpas are, you know, it's their job, but they're risking their necks putting these fixed lines up. Now, what NIMS did incredibly was pick the A team who've obviously done this for a living for many years, but you know, they all supported him in keeping that sort of momentum and pace and speed and defiance, if you like, with that single vision of, you know, achieving that goal and those summits.
That picture you talked about, Helen, where he turns around and takes a picture looking back up Everest, that really saddened me. It was like waiting in a queue for a roller coaster at Alton Towers. It was literally that kind of just wait your turn, take another step, you'll get there, you'll get your picture on top of Everest, and you'll come back down again. And it kind of really saddened me that was the case. So I love the way that, like I say, what do you call it? Breaking trail? Is that the terminology?
Yeah.
For a lot of these places, and you know, some mountains haven't been climbed for years before. You know, so it was really interesting to see how he did that. And this concept, this whole challenge he's trying to do himself, with himself and the team itself, would make for an astonishing documentary. But then it's beset with drama along different stages. You have Nims and his team rescuing people, and also the background drama with his mum being ill and trying to get money for this, and you know, and trying to get permission to climb a mountain in China.
I thought that aspect was so interesting because for Western athletes, you know, we take it for granted that people want to support us going to do stuff and like, oh, I'm going to go and do this challenge, whether it's for me or for charity. Yeah, we'll give you money. Great. How amazing. Go off and self-actualize. Whereas for Nims, it was, you know, Suchi says, or his wife says, it's not in Nepal, it's traditional to give, not to ask. And suddenly you just start realizing how many insidious barriers there are to doing something like this for somebody like Nims.
It really exposes kind of the privilege involved in climbing, in that it's been, you know, you have to be very privileged to do it, because you have to have the money, you have to have the time, you have to, you know, have the time to prepare, you have to be able-bodied. So
yeah, and the sense of entitlement
exposes that, doesn't it? This quite a lot, I think.
This is definitely something that I should do with my life.
I think one thing, yeah, totally. One thing we haven't discussed really is his pathway into this, really, and you know, it's really important to acknowledge that, you know, the Gurkhas, the sort of British military alignment, where for a lot of these young men, it's a pathway into a different life with, you know, certain aspirations. The training is brutal just to get into the Gurkhas. You know, they're renowned for being the world's most ferocious fighters. And, you know, the fact that Nims was the first Gurkha who was in the Special Forces, the UK Special Forces as well. I think he was SBS. And, you know, there's a certain mental formation that's come from a military background as well, which I think has certainly helped him.
But he also seemed very effervescent and talkative, because I've met I don't know if I met any special forces. I don't tend to tell you that often, but people in the army, and they're very kind of a type, aren't they? Where they're reserved and introverted in a way.
Do you reckon?
Well, yeah, I think so. But Nim's just like, yeah, get everyone together. Let's do this. Let's do it as a team.
Nepali people are really like that, though.
Yeah,
it's everyone's a family, all of you at the same time with whiskey.
Everyone was brother. Everyone's
yeah,
brother.
Everyone's exactly, and it's in the language. I think that's really worth listening out for. It's something that I found very poignant in some of those scenes that we won't reveal on the mountain. Was just the habitual use of the word brother when we might say friend or mate or human.
I don't use human in common parlance. Hey, human.
You.
And you also loved a party as well. I mean, the thought of doing anything like that on a hangover, I mean, the thought of leaving bed at the hangover, let alone going up 8,000 feet and above and coming back down in a day.
1,000 meters.
It's just,
That's
meters.
fairly unique, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's insane.
It's crazy. It's insane. Even Jimmy Chin couldn't even find words for that.
He didn't seem quite impressed, did he?
No, he wasn't. It was kind of like, why are you doing that, dude? But also,
I think that was jealousy. He wishes he could do that hungover.
I remember going out snowboarding and stuff, and obviously you have a hard night, and in the morning you get chairlifted to the top of the mountain, and sometimes that's too much. So to like even contemplate walking up thousands of meters of height is
maybe it's that myth that high altitude kills your hangover.
Well, maybe like 1,600 meters does. But,
but maybe not. Maybe not top of the world.
Can I ask a question about the film? Did you guys think there was enough sort of foundation building about his background, his life, or did you think it just jumped straight into the climbing too quickly? I'm really interested in what you guys think of that.
I guess it doesn't really happen at the start, so you do get quite into the challenge quite quickly, and then it kind of is a little bit peppered as you go through with him. How his exit from the army was quite a shock for me, and kind of, when you come to that moment, you're like, crikey, he's made of different stuff. I think it's fair to say, and sometimes it's kind of nice to have a little bit of maybe mystery at the start, and that way you don't go in with any kind of preconceived ideas about what their character or spirit was in. So I think I really felt that I kind of got to know him, and because I think quite early on as well, I think it's his father who sort of is kind of very against it and very sort of angry that he's going to leave the family and go off on this person. Is it his brother or his father?
Yeah.
His
brother go off and leave the family, and you're kind of like, oh, he's gone against the family, and does that kind of make him like, is he a bit of a jerk, is he a bit of like, and you kind of got like little entries, and I think without having too much information further on, you kind of like see more gets revealed, like peeled back as you go through.
Yeah, I think I really like the balance of it, because I think you have to, for people like myself who've been to the top of a mountain, as I say, but only on a chairlift, the concept of this is so far out of whack. You don't understand the scale and the magnitude of it. So I think having to hook people into this is what it's going to do, this is why it's insane, and then it kind of builds up the profile of Nims as you go along. This is why it's insane, but this is why this is the guy that can do it. And I think that kind of build up works through. And I think also would have been really exhaustive to kind of build up the story of Nims and then the challenge, and then it's just challenge after. I think it's nicely kind of broken up and nicely paced all the way through it.
A really powerful image I've got in my head was from early on when he was trying to raise funds for the trip, which were obviously were going to be phenomenal to actually pull this off. And I was actually invited to one of his fundraisers down in London, and managed to briefly say hi to him amongst the hundreds of people that were there. And I think most of them were special forces people, so it was pretty scary environment to be in. But but that sort of like Claire said, that effervescence, but that force of trying to convince people to invest in him. But one of the images I was saying that really hit me was when he was sat in his home in just a suburban house, and his wife was near him, and he's just sort of looking at the table, and he's thinking, shit, what the hell, what have I done? There's no way I can raise this sort of money. He was getting rejections left, right and center. And I think we've all been through that. Certainly I can relate to that with putting on this festival, with my wife who's CEO. And it's like, we look at each other in the evening sometimes and think, what are we doing? This for us is, it's like our Everest, maybe not our 8,000 meters, but it does feel like that sometimes. And I think we can all relate to those moments of desperation where, you look at your partner or your friend and you think, have I really bitten off more than I can chew? Am I doing the wrong thing here? Can you tell me?
Yeah.
And I thought that was a really sort of poignant freeze moment in the film. And I probably would have liked to explore that a bit more, but they had so much to pack in there that, they did it quite well.
Is there anything else you want to say, guys, before we go to the scoring? Well, one thing I should say, just pointing out, NIMS is going to be there on the 19th of November, 2021, if you listen to it as this goes out, at Kendal Mountain Festival. So do head over, and if you can, in the area, or if you're not in the area, make that extra special visit and go over and watch the film and maybe try and shake this guy's hand, because what he's trying to do is insane. And so, I mean, to yourself, Claire and Steve, were you aware of the magnitude of this challenge beforehand? Because, like I say, if someone had said to me, what do you think of climbing 14 of these mountains that are over 8,000 meters? I would have just thought, yeah, I don't see the problem. But do you understand the magnitude of it?
It's obviously a thing, isn't it? I never realised it was a thing to do all 14 of those in one go.
I think I imagine Steve was as well. I certainly was, just because we live and breathe this stuff. But also, I was really lucky and got to go to the Kathmandu Mountain Film Festival a couple of years ago as a judge. And I think being in Nepal and really hanging out in a Nepali community, you realise how mental this is for a Nepali person and how incredibly important it was. So aside from the kind of physical challenge, I think the cultural challenge just felt really amazing. And I think that's something that you should definitely get from this film, is such a love and respect for Nepal. Like, I love the fact that they've really used Nepali music all the way through. That's really cool.
It was amazing. Totally amazing. Obviously, like Claire said, we mix with a lot of these people. We know them. Some of them are friends. And certainly at the start of this challenge, I know a lot of the mountaineers were like, it's impossible. There's absolutely no way this is humanly possible. And we're talking some of the world's top alpinists who told us that. And, that's why he called it Project Possible. He obviously knew he had the X factor. His teammates had the X factor. And, for me, it's as much a film about inclusivity, and it's about, if you can't be what you can't see. And I think that came out very, very strongly within the sort of Nepali standpoint. We should be highly respected mountaineers in our own right. We're not just there to support, the rest of the world here.
To carry the ladder so guys can get over a crevice.
Which is really timely for these times. And, it's very poignant for these times with everything from Black Lives Matter to all the inclusivity content that we're screening at Kendal this year. It's probably the biggest year we're ever discussing that at the festival. So, it's a timely film for us, and it's really making a mark.
Fantastic. Well, guys, let's head to the scores.
I'm Helen O'Hara, film journalist, author, and host of Women vs. Hollywood, a new podcast from the Stripped Media family. We're exploring the fall and rise of women in Hollywood, from the silent era to the present day and into the future. Each episode, I'm joined by 3 or more special guests to discuss the challenges that women face in the film industry and look at what we can do to change the picture. We've got actors, directors, producers, writers, academics, film experts, you name it, they're all here to explain what's going on in Hollywood. Search for Women vs. Hollywood now, wherever you're listening to this, and come join us.
Welcome to the Flixwatcher scores. All of our scores are out of 5. You may have decimal places if you wish, and we will start with you, please, Steve, with your recommendability. So how much out of 5 would you recommend this to people?
4.8.
Do you want to give an explanation? Where's that 0.8 come from? Where did it lose a 0.2?
I think in a sense, I've seen so many of these films that I guess the sort of Jaws-esque music to start with, the jeopardy, the fear, the danger element is sort of blown out, slightly out of proportion. I mean, from the outset, but I think they reined it in as the film progressed. But the sort of exaggerative element is a little bit rubbing me up a bit. It's not. It's a very small gripe, but. Like Claire said, I wish they'd had the Nepali music from the outset, and I think it would have been a bit more of a a cultural respective thing. But yeah, that's where the 0.2 goes.
Claire?
Yeah, I'd go for 4, and my only sort of hesitations are similar, are just a slight, they told instead of showed, where maybe they could have led us on a bit more gently. But I think the human aspect of the story is really cool, and I definitely recommend it on that basis.
Helen?
Yeah, I really enjoyed this. I said this earlier, that I went in thinking there'd be some fairly nice kind of scenery and a bit of peril and everything. But I think it's a lot more than that. And I think it's more kind of a story of determination and being able to inspire others. And I don't think you necessarily need that much prior knowledge going into it, because I think you can appreciate it. You can see these mountains are huge, and there's bits kind of peppered in, probably in kind of a bit of a cheesy Hollywood way, in that sort of, they say every 3 that make it, 1 will die, and it's a bit kind of like a bit cheesy like that. But I think it kind of gives you sort of an idea that it is something really dangerous they're doing. The only kind of fault I would say is that the way it's sort of edited, and it's packing in so much into like a really, really short time, is that it just makes some of the climbs look really, really easy. And it maybe that slightly underplays what a feat it is, because I think the lesser known climbs, it's sort of a shot with them waving at the bottom, they're at the top and then they're back down. It's like, these would take like days, maybe like a week for some people to do, and they've just kind of like shot up in one go. So maybe it undersells a little bit in its style, that what he's actually doing it's really amazing, without people going, oh, it's really amazing. So I'm going to I'm also going to go for a 4.8.
Cool. I'm going for 4.5. And I really agree with what Helen was saying about it almost diminishes some of the feats of, even getting one of these mountains is a phenomenal feat that most people in a small, super small minority of people will ever accomplish. So to make it there and gone within a minute sometimes is like, oh. But I guess, I can see that it potentially would have been repetitive to show Mountain 1 to Mountain 2, Mountain 3, Mountain 4 to however many he finishes. So I get that, but still, each of these is a tiny feat they masterfully, managed to accomplish. So I'm gonna 4.5. Repeat viewing score, Steve.
Totally. Repeat viewing score would be 4.5. I mean, it's one of those that you probably get a lot out of on repeat viewing, and I think I relate to Helen when she said it's a really complex film to execute. I've only been at altitude twice, and the last thing that's on your mind is filming or making a docu-film. That really must be stated, because how the hell you do things like that, it's the last thing you've got on your mind, getting a camera out or pressing record. So how they did that, I just don't know. So yeah, definitely, I think you'll get more out of it on 2 or 3 viewings, definitely.
Claire?
I go for 3. I think rewatching for technical, as Steve says, or behind the scenes kind of perspective would be fascinating, and it'd be really great to have like a director's commentary on that kind of basis.
Helen?
Yeah, so generally with documentaries on Netflix scores, they score quite low, because once you've kind of watched it and you know how it ends, it's less of a need to keep going back. I'm going to go down the middle with 2.5. I think there's quite a lot of information that happens in like the first 20 minutes, and I'm not sure I fully absorbed it. So I think maybe I should definitely watch the start again to get more of that information. And also I watched this on my own, and I think if I was recommending it for someone and said, oh, I really recommend this, and they'd be like, oh, hey, do you want to watch it? I'd go, yeah, I'd want to do that, but probably wouldn't put on as something like, oh, I fancy watching it, but I'd definitely rewatch with other people.
I think I'm going in for 2. I wouldn't repeat, as Helen said, don't repeat documentaries. I can't think of many I have done, apart from ones that people brought into here, which I've watched already. Such as something like Blackfish, for example. But I would genuinely, like, if it was a festival with Nim's going to do a Q&A after it, I would I'm going to make time to watch that again with a crowd, with an audience. So that's why it's not low, because I definitely would want to watch it again, but in a specific circumstance, I'd say. Small screen score, Steve.
Well, I've only watched it on a small screen, so I'm really excited to see it on sort of huge screens that we have in Kendal. So, but yeah, I did find it engaging on a laptop. I think, scaled up, it's going to just get better and better, certainly with some of the greater ranges in front of you. So, gosh, it's got to be high 4 again, 4, 5.
4.5.
Yeah.
Claire.
Yeah, I'd say 4. Sometimes some of the films that we show at Kendal are really frustrating to watch on small screens just because you can't get the perspective and they use a lot of aerial footage. But I think because a lot of the footage is self-shot and close up, and it's really about kind of getting captures of somebody's, the corner of somebody's eye through a snow blasted, hat and goggle shebang. It's about almost a sense of claustrophobia in these big landscapes. So actually, I think this unusually for a mountain film works really well on the small screen.
Helen.
Yeah, what you were saying, Claire, there's some really kind of inventive sort of footage where things are reflected off people's goggles, and it feels really personal. It doesn't feel like, there's helicopter shots and, 5 or 6 cameras. It really has that kind of handhold sort of feel and sort of filming on the go. And I really like that. I'm going to give it a 5. It's obviously coming to Netflix on the 29th, and absolutely you should watch it on your biggest TV that you can. But I would say that if you're obviously listening to this on the 17th and you're in the Kendal area, then you should absolutely go along to this to see it on the big screen and be part of that. So if you're in the area, do go and see it on a big screen. Otherwise, biggish telly if you can at home.
I'm going to go for 4.1. I think it works fantastic on a small screen, and echo what you guys have said about how personal it is, even though it's, man versus literally the biggest edifices in the entire world. But I would like to see it on a bigger screen, because even though it's only shot, all the cameras look like GoPros. I'm so impressed at how GoPros can look amazing on a bigger screen. And
it's cool, isn't it?
Yeah. I've got a GoPro. I never use it for those kind of stuff. I use it
some of the best films that we've had in the last couple of years have been entirely athlete shot on GoPros. I find that really inspiring for people in the audience.
Yeah. And you hear lots of directors, filmmakers in Hollywood throughout saying, yeah, you've got everything you need. You've got your iPhone, you buy a GoPro, you can actually make a film for
Netflix.
You don't need to rent out, an IMAX camera to make a film. You've got the kit, go do it. And that's always really inspiring.
Democracy.
Okay. What did I say? 4.1. Engagement score.
Definitely kept me engaged throughout. 4.8. I know my scores are really high.
Loving the decimals.
Yeah, no, I definitely wasn't. My sort of thoughts about the film was like, I'm not gonna enjoy this. I just felt that from a lot of the hype I've been hearing, and how I'd sort of perceived Nims, that was blown away. I was wrong, and I'm going to admit that. I think he came out really well in the film, and the engagement throughout. You weren't lost. I think the only sort of caveat in that was Helen's comment. I think was spot on, where some of the ascents were sort of overlooked, and I think that did feel a little compacted in the films. Because you've got 14 massive peaks to cover. You were skipping a couple of them. Maybe they just didn't have any footage, but 4.8.
Claire.
Yeah, I go for 4. I thought they wove together aspects of his character with the challenge quite cleverly, whether it was the family and the heritage or the history of the Gurkhas and the kind of escape that offered. I think there were some really interesting themes being developed about sense of freedom in this world, which kind of that really kept me engaged when perhaps the challenge itself didn't in the way that it was portrayed on screen. So yeah, I'd give it a 4.
Helen.
I'd give 4.5. We haven't mentioned there's a nice kind of mix of animations, some really nice animated parts in it as well, which really kind of help to kind of tell the story on a different level and kind of keep like the pace going as well. I think I found. Not going to give it full marks because I did have to have like a little bit of a look at some of the mountains and kind of get a bit of feeling for kind of like how big they were and sort of where they were as well a little bit as well. Not having the background knowledge and getting an understanding of that. And there's a bit in it where he's asking for help, and he sort of talks about his Instagram account, and I had to go and have a look at his Instagram account from that point. So not full marks, because I was doing a little bit of research and just kind of extra knowledge finding while I was watching it.
Yeah, I've saved my research finding until afterwards.
I just couldn't wait.
Like G1 and G2, for example. I don't know why they had the same name. I found out instantly, like, what? Could they not have thought of a different name for two of the tallest mountains in the entire world? Anyway, so things like that. I'm going to do that research afterwards. But yeah, I was in there. I was really enjoying it, and I think the way they did break up the story and how it progresses has you hooked in, and right from the start, was it the first mountain they had to help rescue someone? That's insane, isn't it? There's a lot of drama in this.
There's a lot of drama. A lot of heroism, definitely. Yeah.
So yes, 4.75, and that gives us an overall score of 4.10938, which is high for a documentary. Absolutely.
Very high for a doc, yeah.
Yeah. So Claire and Steve, can you sign off by telling everyone where they can find you guys online, and the festival, and how to get tickets, I guess, if they listen to this on the Wednesday or before the festival starts?
Yeah. Our web address is kendalmountainfestival.com. Everything's on there, tickets. We also have the Kendal Mountain Player, which gives people access not only to the festival, which we're recording, but all year round to the great films and curated content that we capture all year round. So yeah, that's quite new to us, and it's going really well, and that's called the Kendal Mountain Player. But everything is on that web address. Yeah,
so if you can make space after binging Netflix, then I definitely recommend catching the entire festival online for 10 days, apart from, of course, this film, because it's on Netflix. But yeah, please do try that out. It's a really great place to find this kind of these mountain stories.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, guys. And we'll finish off by saying goodbye to all our listeners.
Thanks for coming on.
Bye.
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 Enjoyed this episode of Flixwatcher podcast? Why not leave us a 5-star review on iTunes? You can also follow us at FlixWatcherPod on Twitter, and we're at FlixWatcher on Instagram. Thanks as always to the mighty people for their mighty tunes, and Ben from Rockwood Audio for his awesome editing skills. If you're looking to get your podcast edited as sweet as this, get in touch with Ben, and that's Rockwood, ROKK Wood Audio. Tell them Flixwatcher sent you.
You just heard a Stripped Media production.